It started like any other night, with the familiar hum of my phone, a text message blinking on the screen. Claire. I didn't think much of it at first. We had mutual friends, and it wasn't unusual for her to reach out. But there was something in the timing that made my heart skip a beat. James had been acting strange for a few weeks, distant in ways I couldn't explain. Late nights at work, uncharacteristic irritability, the vague excuses that I, for the longest time, chose not to question. But when I saw her name on the screen, a knot tightened in my stomach. I glanced at James, who was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated in the dim light. I had just come home from a long day, the weight of work, my own small, ever-building frustrations, adding up to an unease I couldn't quite shake. For the last few months, there had been a growing sense of something off. Subtle at first, a tone of avoidance, of secrets hanging in the air. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, that everything was fine. I wanted to believe it, but tonight, the feeling was heavier. "Who's Claire?" I asked, my voice almost too calm, too casual. James didn't look up. "Just someone from work," he mumbled. His response didn't match the hesitance in his eyes when he glanced up. I nodded, pretending to believe him, but my gut told me otherwise. I knew my husband, knew him better than anyone else. And right now, something in the air felt wrong. Later, as I sat alone in the kitchen, the phone in my hand felt heavier than ever. My mind raced with questions I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. I had never been the type to snoop, to check messages, or invade privacy. But tonight, something broke inside me, something I couldn't silence. I opened the conversation. The texts were innocuous at first. Talk about work, shared meetings, casual plans, but as I scrolled, my stomach dropped. There it was, an intimacy that didn't belong. I read through their messages, my hands trembling, each word carving deeper into my chest. The jokes, the late-night exchanges. They weren't just colleagues. They were something more. And then I saw it. Plans for a weekend getaway. A getaway. The heart in my chest pounded as I saw the message confirming the trip. The words hit me like a slap in the face. James, my husband, was planning to leave with her. I leaned against the counter, gasping for breath, my thoughts whirling. How long had this been going on? How long had I been oblivious? My mind raced through the years, the moments I thought I knew him so well. There had been warning signs, but I'd ignored them. Claire's name kept appearing in passing conversations, always in the background. The small late nights, the sudden unavailability. They hadn't meant anything to me at the time. Had I been so blind? I shut my eyes, trying to calm my breathing, the urge to confront him bubbling inside me. But I knew I needed answers before I could speak. I had to see the whole picture. With shaking hands, I scrolled further. And that's when I saw it. The message about the apartment. An apartment. The tears blurred my vision as I read, seeing the plans they had made for a life together. Not a fling. Not a mistake. This was deliberate. A year-long betrayal. I sat there for what felt like hours, my heart breaking slowly, piece by piece. When I finally closed the phone, I felt nothing but cold emptiness. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just married to a man who had betrayed me. I was married to a stranger. The man I had trusted with everything had been building a life behind my back. I didn't know what to do next. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay in the dark any longer. I hardly slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of the messages flashed in front of me. The weekend getaway. The apartment. The life they had planned together. I felt a deep pit open up in my stomach, and with it came the overwhelming realization that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. I kept replaying the last few months, the moments I thought were insignificant, the long hours James spent at work, the quick, distracted kisses, the way he avoided my gaze when he came home late. All of those small, unspoken signs that I had brushed aside as nothing more than the stress of life. They weren't nothing. They were pieces of a puzzle I was only now beginning to see. The morning came too soon. I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, my face pale and drawn. My eyes were red from lack of sleep, and my mind was 1,000 miles away. I had no idea what I was supposed to do now. What could I possibly say to him? How could I confront the man I had loved for 15 years, the man who had torn my world apart without a second thought? The sound of his footsteps in the hallway startled me. I turned, meeting his eyes in the mirror. He was already dressed, looking like he always did. Handsome, polished, put together. But today I saw him for who he truly was, a man who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. He came into the bathroom, his eyes scanning me for any hint of a storm that was brewing inside me. He didn't know that I knew. Not yet. But I could feel it, the tension in the air. He sensed that something was wrong. "Good morning," he said, his voice as casual as if nothing had changed. I turned to face him, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Good morning, James." I kept my voice steady, though the shaking inside me was almost unbearable. I couldn't do this without calm, without knowing I was in control of my emotions. I was done pretending. "I've been thinking," I began slowly, choosing my words carefully, "about the trip you're planning." His expression faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough for me to catch it. The mask slipped, and I saw a glimpse of panic before it was replaced with a practiced smile. "What trip?" he asked, though I could hear the faintest tremor in his voice. "Don't play dumb with me," I said sharply. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The weekend getaway with Claire. The apartment you've been looking at together." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I could see him struggling to find the right thing to say, to spin the lie, to cover up his tracks. But it was too late. "I saw everything, James," I continued, my voice quieter now, but no less fierce. "The messages, the plans, the life you were building with her. You've been lying to me for months, haven't you?" I watched his face fall, the shock and guilt overtaking him. He took a step back, almost like he was retreating, unsure of how to face me now that the truth had been exposed. "Victoria, he started, but I cut him off. "Don't," I said. My voice was firm, cutting through the air between us. "Don't say anything. You've said enough already." He didn't speak. He stood there, his mouth hanging open, as if he was searching for a way to explain himself, to make it right. But I could already see the cracks in the man I thought I knew. All those years of building a life together, all the love we'd shared, felt like they had been nothing but smoke and mirrors. I crossed my arms, waiting for him to say something that would give me a reason to keep listening. But the silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. His eyes flickered to the door, to the phone in his hand, but he didn't move. It was almost as if he was trying to decide whether or not to run. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Victoria, His voice faltered, and for the first time in all these years, I saw the man I thought I knew crumble. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. A mistake." I echoed, my voice cold. "A mistake is something that happens once, James. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A deliberate choice. You chose her over me. Over us. And now you want to call it a mistake." His eyes watered as he reached for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't bear to be touched by him. "Not now." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I was going through something, and I let it get out of control. I never meant for it to go this far. I swear to you it was a mistake. I'll end it. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I shook my head, my heart heavy with anger and hurt. "You think saying sorry is going to fix this? After everything? After I've trusted you, built my life around you? Do you think it's that easy?" "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said, his voice desperate now. "I was going to tell you. I was planning on telling you everything. But I didn't know how to. I thought I could stop it, but I couldn't. Please, Victoria, don't throw everything away because of this. Don't tell me what to do." I snapped, my anger flaring. "This is my life, James. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You don't get to decide how this ends. You've already made that choice for both of us." I could see him crumbling, the walls he had built around himself crumbling, too. It wasn't the man I had married. It was a stranger who had been hiding behind lies for so long that he no longer knew who he was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at him, to make him feel the pain that had been building up inside me. But I held it in. I had to be strong. "I'll move out," he said after a long pause, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll leave. I'll go wherever you want me to go. Just don't give up on us." I looked at him, my heart heavy but resolute. "It's too late, James. I gave you everything. And now, I have nothing left to give. With those final words, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, broken and lost. But I wasn't the one who was lost. I wasn't the one who had been living a lie. I had finally woken up, and now I would begin the painful journey of rebuilding. I don't remember much about the rest of the day. It was like the world had moved in slow motion, each minute dragging on as if time itself was trying to avoid the inevitable. I left James standing there, my mind spinning with the weight of everything I had just uncovered. The house felt empty, even though he was still there, somewhere. The walls, which had once been filled with the sound of laughter and shared moments, now echoed with silence. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. Should I stay here? Pack up everything and leave? Every instinct told me to flee, to run far away from the pain that lingered in this place. But the thought of abandoning everything, the home, the life I had built, felt like admitting defeat. I couldn't do that. Not yet. I wandered around the house aimlessly, my thoughts as disjointed as my movements. The kitchen was cold, the sunlight filtering through the windows in a way that should have been comforting, but instead made me feel more alone. The dining table where we used to sit together for meals now felt like a place of judgment. Everything seemed foreign to me, like I was a guest in a house that wasn't mine. I made a cup of tea, even though I didn't feel like drinking it. My hands trembled as I gripped the mug, staring out the window, my mind replaying James's confession over and over again. His words, "I was going to tell you," echoed in my ears. How many times had he said something similar in the past, when he was caught in a half-truth or caught up in a lie? The guilt in his eyes hadn't been for me. It had been for himself. A knock on the door shattered my thoughts. I froze, not expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, surprised to see Michael standing there. I hadn't seen him in weeks, not since the dinner where everything had changed. I had tried to distance myself from him, out of respect for my marriage, or what was left of it, but he had been there for me in ways I hadn't realized I needed. I opened the door, not sure if I was ready for another conversation, but somehow knowing it was inevitable. "Victoria," Michael said softly, his gaze kind and steady, yet filled with something deeper, concern maybe. "Can we talk?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He didn't wait for an invitation. Instead, he entered with the quiet authority that had always characterized him. He didn't ask how I was doing, or if I was okay. Instead, he simply sat down at the kitchen table and waited for me to join him. I sat across from him, still clutching the teacup in my hands, though it had gone cold. "I don't know what to do," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I feel lost, like I don't even know who I am anymore." Michael's gaze softened. He didn't rush to offer comfort, but instead let the silence settle between us. I could feel his presence, calm and unwavering. I wasn't sure if he understood what I was going through, but I could tell that he wasn't judging me. He wasn't trying to fix me. He was simply there. "I know," he said after a long pause. "It's not easy, and there's no right way to handle this. But you don't have to do it alone, Victoria. You have people who care about you. You're not as alone as you think." I nodded, though the words felt foreign in my mouth. It was hard to accept help, especially now. But something about Michael's presence made it easier to breathe. "James wants to fix this," I said, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the air. "But I don't know if I can ever forgive him. Not after what he did." "You don't have to forgive him right away," Michael replied. "Healing takes time. There's no rush. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to feel betrayed." "I don't even know what's real anymore," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know if I can trust anything he says. Or anyone. Maybe I've been living in a dream this whole time." Michael leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "You haven't been living a dream, Victoria. You've been living your truth. The truth about who you are, what you wanted, and what you deserve. That doesn't change just because someone else decided to live a lie." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. Michael's words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge I had been teetering on. "I keep asking myself if I missed the signs," I whispered. "If I could have seen this coming. Could I have done something differently?" "Maybe," he said. "But hindsight is always clearer. The important thing is that you're seeing it now. You're waking up to the truth, and you're doing something about it." I looked down at my hands, trying to make sense of his words. I wasn't sure if I believed him. Could I really rebuild my life? Could I go on after everything had come crashing down? You don't have to figure it all out today, Michael continued. Take it one step at a time. Don't pressure yourself to have all the answers right now. You've been through something unimaginable, and it's going to take time to process. His words sank in, settling deep in my chest. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't have to fix everything at once. Maybe I just needed to take it day by day and let the pieces fall where they may. I don't know where to start, I said quietly. You start by taking care of yourself, he said, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips. Start with what makes you feel grounded. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you can begin by healing. I nodded, though it felt like a hollow promise. The road ahead was long, and I didn't know how I was going to navigate it. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel entirely alone. As Michael stood to leave, I felt a small flicker of hope ignite inside me. Maybe things weren't as impossible as they seemed. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for me to rebuild. I watched him walk out the door, his presence lingering like a warm shadow in the room. I took a deep breath and looked around the house once more. It felt emptier than before, but that didn't scare me anymore. I wasn't afraid to face the unknown. I had no choice but to move forward, and so I would. It had been a week since that conversation with Michael, and despite the uncertainty still looming over me, I found myself starting to breathe a little easier. The house no longer felt like a prison, though it was still empty in ways I couldn't quite explain. I had started picking up the pieces, tidying up the remnants of what had been my life. Every task, no matter how mundane, felt like a small victory. The simple act of organizing the shelves felt like a statement to myself. Asterisk, I'm still here. I'm still standing, asterisk. But every step forward was laced with the echo of James's face, his apology lingering in my mind like a ghost. He had begged me for forgiveness, but I wasn't sure if I could give it, or if I even wanted to. The more I thought about his words, the more complicated everything became. How could I reconcile the person I thought I knew with the one who had shattered everything I believed? How could I untangle myself from the web of lies we had both built over the years? I decided to call a therapist. I didn't know why it had taken me this long to reach out, but something about this moment felt different. I had been walking around with a hole in my chest for far too long, pretending that everything was okay. I needed help to make sense of the chaos inside me. The therapist's office was in a sleek building downtown, nestled between a high-end cafe and a law firm. The polished glass doors gave little hint of the kind of warmth that awaited inside. But once I stepped into the waiting room, I was greeted by soft lighting, plush chairs, and a feeling of calm that immediately wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I filled out the intake forms, my hand trembling slightly as I wrote down the details of my life. The last 2 years felt like a blur. Marriage, betrayal, lies, pain. It had all happened so fast, and I wasn't sure if I had truly processed any of it. When the therapist, Dr. Larkin, called me in, I followed her down a narrow hallway and into a room that smelled faintly of lavender. The walls were decorated with abstract paintings, and there was a low hum of soft instrumental music in the background. Dr. Larkin motioned to a chair across from hers. I sat down, adjusting my skirt, and immediately felt the weight of being alone with my thoughts. "Victoria," she began, her voice gentle but steady. "I'm glad you're here." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. The quiet of the room felt suffocating, and I wondered if I'd made a mistake by coming here. But then Dr. Larkin spoke again, her words simple but profound. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. What you're feeling, confusion, betrayal, anger, is valid. But it's also a starting point. It's where we begin to rebuild." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until the tears started to come. They weren't loud or dramatic, but they were there, slipping down my cheeks in silence. I had been holding everything in for so long, trying to maintain the facade of someone who was fine when I wasn't. Dr. Larkin didn't rush me. She simply let the silence hang in the air, allowing me to process the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes, and began to speak. "I don't know where to start," I said, my voice shaky. "I feel like everything I've built is a lie. I thought I had a future with James. I thought I knew who he was. But now, my words faltered. I felt vulnerable, exposed. "You're not the only one who's been deceived, Victoria," she said softly. And it's not just about James's betrayal. It's about your own perception of reality. You trusted in something, and that trust was shattered. Now it's time to rebuild. Asterisk with you at the center of its star dot. Her words cut through me, more impactful than I could have anticipated. I had spent so much time thinking about what I had lost that I hadn't stopped to think about what I still had, the strength to rebuild, to start over. She was right. I had been so focused on James's betrayal, on trying to make sense of his lies, that I hadn't taken the time to ask myself what I needed. I left the session feeling like a weight had been lifted, though I still felt the heaviness of what had happened. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely overwhelmed by the unknown. There was a path ahead of me, however faint it might be, and I was beginning to see it. The next few days passed in a blur of work and moments of reflection. I started to make small changes around the house. I reorganized my closet, throwing out clothes I hadn't worn in years. I donated old books that had once meant something to me but now felt like relics of someone else's life. As I cleared away the remnants of my past, I found myself asking deeper questions. What did I want moving forward? What kind of life did I want to create for myself, now that everything I had known had been upended? One night, I sat down at the kitchen table, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows on the walls. I had just finished a phone call with my sister, who had offered words of encouragement, though I could tell she was still processing the fallout of everything that had happened. The conversation left me feeling both comforted and unsettled. That was when my phone buzzed with a text from James. I need to see you. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. The impulse to ignore it was overwhelming, but something inside me, something I couldn't quite name, made me respond. Why? The reply came almost instantly. Asterisk, I owe you an explanation. I need to apologize. There's more I need to tell you, asterisk. I didn't know what he could possibly have left to say. After everything, after what had already been said and done, I couldn't fathom what explanation could change anything. But curiosity gnawed at me, and before I could stop myself, I typed out a response. Asterisk, okay, but this better be good, asterisk. He agreed to meet the next day, and I immediately regretted it. The morning after my conversation with James, I stood at the window, staring out at the city below. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind of morning where the air felt fresh, but it also carried a chill, a reminder that everything was changing. I had no idea what this meeting would bring, but something in me felt like I had no choice but to face whatever it was. I couldn't keep running away from it. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, and the minutes dragged on. I still hadn't responded to James's message. His words haunted me. I owe you an explanation. I need to apologize. There's more I need to tell you. What could he possibly say that would make any difference now? After everything. But as I looked at the text, I realized something. I wasn't just scared of what he might say. I was terrified of what I might hear. I left the house earlier than I'd planned, making my way to the cafe where we'd agreed to meet. It was tucked away on a quiet street, one of those places that felt familiar but always new. As I walked through the door, I noticed the smell of fresh coffee beans and pastries, and I briefly wondered if James had picked the spot because it was neutral ground. We had shared many quiet mornings here once upon a time, before everything had come crashing down. I spotted him immediately, sitting at a corner table, looking older, more worn than the man I had once known. His posture was slumped, and his fingers drummed nervously on his coffee cup, the steam curling up in delicate tendrils before vanishing into the air. For a moment, I hesitated. What was I doing here? What was the point of this conversation after everything that had happened? But I reminded myself that I wasn't here for him. I was here for me, because despite the hurt, despite the betrayal, I deserved to know the truth. I approached the table, and his eyes met mine, filled with something I couldn't quite decipher. There was regret, yes, but also something else, a heaviness that seemed to hang between us, like a fog we couldn't see through. Victoria, he said softly, as if testing the waters. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I nodded, sliding into the seat across from him. What do you want to tell me, James? He took a deep breath, running his hand through his hair, before finally speaking. I know I've already apologized, and I know that won't change anything, but I need you to understand, I was never the man you thought I was. I lied to you, yes, but there's more to it than just that. I felt the tension in my chest tighten. What do you mean? What else is there? He paused, then met my gaze, his eyes darkened with something I couldn't place. I didn't just cheat on you. I wasn't just hiding things. I was playing you, Victoria. I never loved you the way I should have. It's not just the affair with Claire. It's the lies that came before that, the things I did to keep you in the dark. You were never a priority to me. I never thought you'd find out, and when you did, I panicked. His words hit me like a cold slap, but there was more to them, something deeper, darker. I leaned forward, suddenly feeling every ounce of attention between us. What are you saying? What else have you been hiding? He swallowed hard, then lowered his voice. I wasn't just having an affair with Claire. There were others. And I think I might have put you in danger. I'm sorry, Victoria. You deserve so much more than I ever gave you. The room around me seemed to spin for a moment, as if the very foundation of my world had just cracked open. The last few months felt like a nightmare, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I had trusted him, believed in the life we had built together, and now it was all falling apart before my eyes. Danger, I repeated, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain composed. What do you mean? What do you mean you put me in danger? He looked away, his fingers gripping his coffee cup tightly. I don't know all the details, but I've been involved in some shady stuff, Victoria. People who are dangerous. People who wouldn't hesitate to hurt anyone in their way. And you were caught in the middle of it. I never meant for it to go this far. My heart pounded in my chest. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I was no longer sure if I was hearing him right, or if this was some kind of twisted attempt at an excuse. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was something far darker, far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. James, you're telling me you were involved with dangerous people? And you didn't think to tell me? My voice was rising now, but I couldn't help it. The anger, the betrayal, the sheer disbelief were spilling out. He nodded, his face pale. I never wanted to drag you into it. That's why I kept you in the dark. But now I realize I never should have kept you in the dark. And now I'm afraid it's too late. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across the table. I looked up to see a man standing behind James, his face obscured by a dark jacket and a low cap. He was tall, his posture tense, and something in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't here for coffee. He wasn't here for conversation. James froze, his eyes widening in recognition. What are you doing here? The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out something, a thick envelope. He dropped it onto the table between us, and without saying a word, turned and walked away, leaving the envelope behind like an ominous warning. I glanced at James, my heart racing. Who was that? What is this? James didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the envelope, his face draining of color. Finally, he looked up at me, his voice barely a whisper. You need to leave. Now. Don't ask questions. Just go. Please. Everything inside me screamed to stay, to demand answers, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the real fear, and something told me I wasn't going to get any more truth from him today. I grabbed the envelope, but as I turned to leave, I heard his voice one last time, softer now, filled with regret. I never wanted this for you, Victoria. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I couldn't. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me like a shock to my system. I stood there for a moment, staring at the envelope in my hands, and for the first time in a long while, I had no idea what the next step was. But one thing was clear, my life was no longer my own. It was caught up in something much bigger than I had ever realized. And whatever was in that envelope, I was about to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the cool autumn wind brushing against my face, and for a long moment, all I could do was stare at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, as though it held not just papers, but my future. My pulse quickened as I realized how little I knew anymore. I had been living in the shadows of someone else's lies for so long that now, in the light of truth, I had no idea what to believe. I made my way home, the world around me seeming to blur as I walked. My thoughts were scattered, swirling with questions. What was James involved in? What had he gotten me caught up in? I had thought the worst was behind me, but I knew now that the real danger was only just beginning. As I entered my apartment, I threw the envelope onto the kitchen counter and paced, trying to calm my racing thoughts. My phone buzzed, and I saw it was a message from Michael. Are you okay? I texted back quickly. I don't know. Meet me at the park. I need to talk. It wasn't long before he was there, his concerned face greeting me as I arrived. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, his voice filled with worry. I wasn't sure I had the strength to explain it all, but there was no turning back. Not now. I led him to the bench near the edge of the park, where the trees swayed gently in the breeze. The sound of leaves rustling filled the silence between us. What's going on, Victoria? Michael asked, his gaze steady on me. I didn't know where to start. The envelope, the man at the cafe, James's confession. It all felt like too much, and yet it was clear I couldn't keep it all to myself any longer. I met James, I began, my voice trembling slightly. And it was worse than I thought. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was involved in something dangerous. Something I can't even understand. He's been lying about everything. And now there's this. I gestured to the envelope in my hand, which I had carried with me. Michael took it from me gently, his eyes scanning the thick seal before carefully opening it. Inside, there was a set of papers, documents, photographs, and an unmarked flash drive. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the papers, the weight of the situation settling in between us. This doesn't look good, he murmured, his voice tense. I could barely look at the papers, but I knew it was time to face whatever lay ahead. What is this? What do we do now? Michael's gaze shifted to the flash drive, and without saying a word, he plugged it into his phone. We both watched as files began to open. Photos, names, dates, things I didn't understand, things that made my head spin. But then, something caught my eye, James's name. But it wasn't just his name. It was connected to a network of people I didn't recognize, shadowy figures in foreign countries, and a series of transactions that had nothing to do with business. This is organized crime, Michael said, his voice low. And James was involved. Deeply. This isn't just about an affair. He's been using you, Victoria. And now they know you know. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as the reality of the situation began to sink in. I wasn't just a victim of infidelity. I was entangled in something far more sinister. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of the world pressing down on me. I had thought I was just getting out of a broken marriage, but now it seemed that my escape had led me straight into the heart of a dangerous web. What do we do? I asked, barely able to breathe. What happens now? Michael looked at me, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just concern. It was something stronger, something more protective. We get ahead of this, he said firmly. We don't wait for them to come for you. We go to the authorities. We take this to the right people, and we make sure James doesn't pull you any deeper into this mess. He's not your responsibility anymore. I wanted to argue, to say that I couldn't possibly trust anyone else after all the lies, but Michael was right. This wasn't about James anymore. It was about me. About taking back control, about standing up for myself and my future. I'll help you, Michael said, his voice steady. We'll figure this out together. In that moment, something inside me clicked. I wasn't just a woman betrayed by her husband. I wasn't just a victim of circumstances. I was stronger than I had ever known, and I wouldn't let this define me. I wouldn't let these dangerous people win. We take it to the authorities, I said, my voice stronger now. But we do it on our terms. We make sure that they know we're not afraid. Michael smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that meant everything was going to be okay. No, this was the kind of peace that comes from knowing you're ready to face whatever comes next. We left the park, the cool night air settling around us like a blanket. The uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed large, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could face it. I was no longer running from my past. I was walking toward my future, and nothing, no one was going to stand in my way.